Well, hi. It's so lovely to see you, Wendy, and welcome, Brian. We're here for an
Mhm.
interview today because we're onboarding Wendy Leggett. Yay, she's joining the ALD family.
So excited to be
Yay.
here. I just think it's such a robust and dynamic group that you're um, developing and creating, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Oh, well, we'll share the story that you sort of tie into, even though we hadn't met you yet, about how ALD was born.
Mm.
So, ALD is initials for A Life Designed, which is the name of our membership platform. A Life Design Team Coaching is our YouTube channel where this is going to appear. And Wendy's a new team coach. So, that's very exciting to have you join us. And you just fill a perfect segment that was completely absent. So, Brian, I'll share a little bit and then you can pipe in about as we were having a conversation, maybe it's 14 months ago now. And you said, well, Mom, while you were overseas and I'm here in Texas, what are your plans for retirement? And I said, I don't have any. I love the work I do. I'm just going to keep working. He said, you might need something more than that. So you've talked about a one-to-many model, and I've done some research. And maybe we can create, streams of income into your retirement where you're dialing down how much you work, but the money stays the same. And I said, well, yeah, we should explore that. And then a couple of months later, we're buying a URL and we've signed up to build out a platform, and the Life Design was born. But it really came from, well, what are in the last chapters of your life? And I'm like, who wants to know what I'm going to be? So, Brian, you want to talk about how you brought that up and kind of how this turned into a life design?
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear, what Wendy has to say about, helping people shift into retirement. But with ALD, I mean, there's a lot of different visions behind it. Helping people with retirement is a great thing. We want to bring a whole team of coaches that can help people in all the different areas of their lives
Mhm.
and, basically create a positive, collaborative community around that. I think there's a real need for those types of communities, especially online communities, since that's very, accessible now. And it's hard to find in-person communities that are kind of collaborative, supportive, and positive. I mean, there's churches and stuff, but not everyone believes all those things. And so I kind of wanted more of an open-minded space where people can just support each other, help each other out, and also coaches have the opportunity to make money and help people. And that's part of it. But Wendy, you would be our first, retirement coach, which is an exciting thing. I mean, I would just like to hear you talk more about the type of work that you like to do and how you help people make those transitions into retirement.
Yeah, well, I so appreciate the opportunity. And again, it's just great to connect with both of you and to the greater community. I think that your vision of being collaborative and supportive and bringing people together in community is so vitally important because we know that that epidemic of loneliness is out there at every age and life stage, and most certainly hits those as they move post-career into then their retirement years and their elder years. And we don't want that for anyone. We know that we're all social creatures.
Mhm.
That connection is so vitally important for our health and our well-being and our, being able to have a sustainable life. And
Mhm.
so, um, my background is as a corporate sales leader, and I was in that for quite a lot of years and love the connection with people, with my clients, elevating my team members' capabilities, and also meeting and exceeding sales and service numbers. Loved all of those things. The last position I was in, though, the company was sold, and the new owners that came on board were really having a very different sensibility. So it was a culture clash for me. They didn't face the clients in the way that I felt was that win-win proposition. They
Mhm.
weren't really elevating the team members' capabilities. So I hit that crossroads, and I think a lot of people that are moving post-career into retirement maybe are at that point as well. For many, that's not. But I just want to raise that up because if we can really tap into where we're at and how we feel about things and our values, if we're seeing that there's a misalignment there, then oftentimes that's a signal that, okay, something needs more attention. And I kind of fought that for a bit. And maybe you all have dealt with this too, where, I can make this work, I can figure out that pathway. But it just became so painful. And unfortunately, sometimes growth comes from that pain. So I made that decision that, okay, I'm going to leave this company. Will I continue on that path? Or do I want to really foster, some new capabilities and reach out in ways that I hadn't before? And I thought, well, all the things I've mentioned to you, the connection, the meeting goals and outcomes, and elevating people's situation. I found that I could do that in coaching. So I went back to school, and I want to spotlight that too, because I think, I'm at that age that I haven't been in school for a long time, and maybe some of you listening feel the same way. But wow, it's so energizing. It's so scary. It kind of shakes us out of our comfort zone. And we know that growth happens when we're in maybe that area of discomfort that we're pushing things a little. So I am now a professional certified coach. I was working in the business realm and found that a lot of it was still around strategy and around, moving the numbers and more tactical. And I really love the transformation that I felt that coaching provides, because as a coach, and maybe all of you listening know this, we really know that the individual has the resources and that we help them self-discover. So it's not a matter, we're not a consultant giving a checklist of things. Not that that's all that consultants do. We're not a therapist where we don't really focus so very much on the past, but we look at how it might inform us as we move forward. And so I just love that opportunity. But as I was working with clients, I found that a number of my small business owners, my sales leaders were starting to retire, and those in my social circle were. And just as Brian saw maybe with you, Myrna, is that, now what? And some of them really had some very difficult emotions about that, feeling stuck or confused or overwhelmed or overly anxious, or maybe even so excited. So I started digging deeper as to, how could I really support those clients and those people in my circles, and discover the whole world of non-financial retirement coaching. So I don't deal with the financial piece. And so that's what I embarked on, got several additional certifications on retirement life planning, positive intelligence, so that we have that positive perspective as we age, and also navigating transitions. So I bring quite an expertise, I think, and body of work to my clients as I help them navigate that transition from career to retirement. So I talked a lot. There's lots more, of course, but I'll stop there and see if that raises questions before I keep going on.
Well, no, it's very exciting. When I was describing to someone what you do, I said, imagine that you've maybe been married for 25 years and the kids are off in college in their own life, and you're thinking about one or both of you retiring in some near term thing. You've probably both, a husband and wife, different ideas about what retirement would look like without ever really talking about it. Like maybe, you've talked about, well, we meant to travel, or maybe we'll go back to Michigan because the kids are there, or we're going to get out of the snow. And is it Arizona or Florida? Pick one, because we're getting out of the snow. But there may be ideas that haven't really caught up to real-time planning now that it's real,
Yes.
and how do you work with a couple? So I'm curious about that, to say, here's what you were thinking, and we've talked about different things, but where are we now? What are we thinking now?
Yes, yeah. And really, the scenario that you're sharing is a real one. We are unfortunately seeing that in the demographic that's more of retirement age, what they call graying divorces or silver splitters. I don't like either term, but the point is that we're seeing a rise in divorce. And there's lots of factors that come into play, but one of them is you're mentioning that this lack of clarity around vision. And that can be for those that are without a significant other in their lives, or those that are a couple couple
Mhm.
that we oftentimes are so excited about retirement. We focus oftentimes, the heavy focus is on financial. And
Mhm.
so then we leave all those other factors behind. We leave, what's going to be exciting to me and feel meaningful to me and purposeful to me and get me excited to get up every morning and feel motivated. All of those things are baked into our work. And oftentimes when we leave work, we can leave pieces of ourselves behind. There's a saying, if you are what you do, who are you when you don't? And really, when we embark on retirement, we can start to feel unmoored. We can start to feel that we're, like one of my clients said, lost in the desert, or another said, I feel like I'm going to fail. So I want to mention that vision in both when we're single or when we're in a couple, that really stepping into what does that look like for me, and defining what is retirement for me. Like when you spoke with Brian and you said, hey, maybe I'll never retire. So for you, what does that word even mean? Because it's kind of a passé term, but it's one that we all share right now. I think that word retired will get retired because it really has a significance that doesn't really belong in our vocabulary anymore. We know that our lifespans hopefully are continuing, and our health spans hopefully are as well. And so if we aren't then really thinking ahead of those seasons ahead of us and what we want them to look like, then we allow other people or life to make those decisions for us. So I really talk about being the CEO of you, being the leader of your life and making some of those decisions. So now let's talk about those couples. So we're going to then really recommend that people start with their vision individually, really think about, okay, how do I view this next chapter in life? What do I really want? What do I want to make sure I experience? What are priorities for me? What would I regret if I didn't step into it or have this? Because, there's that time abundance in retirement. We think, oh, the years are going to stretch on, but we're only promised this moment. We're not guaranteed anything beyond. So really prioritizing. That's something that, because we're on a career track or we're busy, 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 that we don't stop and really reflect. And we, again, allow life sometimes to carry it on its course instead of setting the course for ourselves. So for those couples, then start with your own vision and then have a conversation. So communication is vitally important, because otherwise there are assumptions, there are expectations. And it's understandable that people can start to veer off and not go down the path together. So I have a really great exercise called couples conversations that people do on their own, and then they come together, and it's really those talking points. It's really a conversation starter to kind of see where you're aligned and where you're maybe going off in other directions. And there's nothing wrong with going off in other directions as long as we come back together, because there's a beauty, of course, in having some of our own individual interests and things that we can bring back to the relationship, and that makes it even that much more robust. But I'll underscore again, gaining your vision, sharing your vision, communicating it, not making assumptions, recognizing that just in all relationships, there's going to be a give and take. There's going to be that collaboration. But then stepping back to the individual as well as the couples, we start with that vision. We also need to really dig deep and say, what's my perspective around retirement? Do I come with that half empty or half full glass? Do I come on one end of the spectrum or the other, that I am pessimistic and I'm looking at it as aging and loss and a downward slope? Or am I on the other end of the spectrum, idealistic, endless weekends, leisure, travel, stress-free life? Well, both of them are extremes. And so I really help people bring it to the middle at that realistic optimism, and really recognizing that 1 in 3 struggle in retirement. 50% don't feel mentally or socially prepared for retirement. There are going to be things that bubble up for us. 47 hours on average TV watching for
Oh
retirees,
my gosh.
making a full-time job because they don't have a vision. They don't really have something you're looking forward to. So really that perspective, and that's an area that I'm able to help people with as well, is seeing, what are those limiting beliefs? What are some of those things that might be holding us back that don't really belong in our lives anymore? Maybe they were on autopilot for us, patterns and habits we built up, but ones that we can release on if we're aware and intentional. So those are the first two things. And again, I can keep going.
Oh, I
But
have
what
another
questions?
question for you. One of the things you mentioned, and I'd never heard it before, is updating your social resume.
Mhm.
I've known people who retired. I have an uncle who was a captain for an airline, and his vision was, I'm going to golf full time. That's what I'll do. So he moved to Phoenix, where you can golf, 365 days a year. If you live like a lizard and could do 110 degrees in the heat or whatever, I mean, it's golfing at dawn, during the
Sacrifices must be made for some
yeah, that's
golfers.
right. But he thought that's okay. Well, after a couple of years of a whole lot of golf, you know, he ended up buying a business to find something to do and
Yeah.
bought a completely different kind of business. It looked pretty simple to run. And he was so much happier. He can still golf on the weekends,
Mm.
but he wanted a reason to get up in the morning and be useful. And
Yeah.
so I think what's so helpful about your coaching is to first confront, what does it mean to be retired? Does it mean a permanent vacation? Where do you find the juice in your life right now? And when that gets shut off, how do you live without it? Do we replace it?
Yes, yeah, and you bring up a number of important points that recognizing that doing and that busyness belonged in work possibly, but it doesn't really have to have a place in retirement. So many clients come to me saying, I'm busier than I ever was, and I'm exhausted, and is this all there is for me? I feel like I'm on this hamster wheel, and I might as well go back to work and make money. And I think that's where we saw that in retirement for a bit too, because people didn't have that vision beyond the doing and filling their dance card. So what I really recommend for people is that we kind of do an acid test about that to-do list and that bucket list and those activities and say, what's the meaning? What's the juice, like you said, behind this? What feels purposeful to me? How do I connect with this? And of course, we can have activities and we don't have to dig that deep on it. But if the majority of our activities are just keeping us busy, oftentimes it's people's way of justifying not being at work or a distraction for them and really not allowing them to live into this incredible opportunity that they have. So that's something I recommend too, is like looking at how you're spending your time, because this gets at that priorities. That word purpose looms large for people. And I think oftentimes we think, oh, I'm going to be in retirement and now I have to find purpose. And that's something I think throughout our lives we feel that way as well. But there's been a lot of work, especially by Richard Leider, around this and that idea that instead of finding purpose, we move it into a verb. And so it's feeling purposeful. And we can feel purposeful reading a book, helping a neighbor. Yes, starting a business, going fishing, going golfing. We can feel purposeful in many ways, but it is that giving it that extra thought about what meaning does this bring? How am I contributing to myself or those I love, my community, my world, which is what I think a life designed is allowing us for, as well as those feelings of purposefulness and connection. So I want to raise that up. You spoke about the social resume, and that does lead us to this idea of connecting to who we are and all those skills, capabilities, passions that we had in work, many of which we can transfer and translate into our retirement. It doesn't mean that if we were a financial advisor, that then in retirement we need to do things around finances, but maybe our process orientation, or maybe the research that we enjoyed, or maybe the connection with clients. How can we translate that into ways that would feel fulfilling? So lots of ways that clients discover that, but it does take some of that digging deep. And this specifically around the social resume is this idea that when we leave work, that idea of our identity being so interwoven with what we did, that oftentimes we can feel like when people say, what are you doing? You say, I'm retired, that you're kind of feeling dismissed. That's the feedback I get. But if instead we lead with the things, again, that are of importance to us and value, we can come with that clarity and that confidence and that commitment to what we are contributing. So it can be that, whatever vocation you've involved in, whatever volunteerism, but really, again, being mindful about what that social resume looks like. And then I do want to also underscore, because there's all these different piece parts, and I don't want it to sound complicated because there's a roadmap. Just like we have templates in so many of these transitions in life, there's a roadmap I take people through that helps us step by step move into what this next chapter can look like. And a part of that then is that social connection and really recognizing that we're going to lose a lot of that connection we had at work that again was baked into work. And we can feel as though we're going to carry all those friendships or relationships, but we no longer have that common bond or that goal that we're working on together. So how are we going to replace that or supplement it? So that's another exercise I go with people is really doing an inventory of your friends and the quality and the quantity of those friends. And are they gains or are they drains? Are they people that really support us and boost us up like this community will? Or are they people that maybe pull us back or draw us down? And then considering fresh friends, again, what your community will offer, because we have so many opportunities to expand our horizons and not feel that as we're getting older, that our world is narrowing. And so that's that perspective that we want to change. And we can do that through connections as well. So again, lots there.
I have so many questions. Okay. So the other day, I have a friend who has two elementary school boys and they're in a divorce. And so every once in a while, the mom's schedule and the dad's schedule goes. And so I'll get a phone call. Hey, are you busy this afternoon? Could you pick the kids up from school? And so it's kind of fun, to have elementary school kids and bake cookies or something. I mean, I like it. And but I was talking to a woman in the carpool line, and I wanted to be
Well,
sure.
you were doing it all, weren't you?
Well, I'm
You were doing
like,
the carpool, the
yeah,
cookies, the taking
yeah,
care of it.
am I in the right carpool line? Like, it's been a long time since I was picking up Brian from carpool. So, it's like, how does this work again? And there's 1,000 new rules. I mean, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
So is your name on the list? You have the thing in the dashboard and okay. So I'm just like double checking I'm where I'm supposed to be. And she's a woman of a certain age. And she goes, yes, I come 3 days a week to pick up my two granddaughters because after school care is $800 a month. And so, my son and daughter-in-law, they do well, but they don't have an extra $1,600 to have two kids in aftercare. And they both work until 5:30 or 6. School's out at 3 o'clock. And so, and I said, do you have a part-time job now? And she goes, 3 days a week, I kind of do. And it seems like it was sort of agreed upon, but you have to wonder in retirement if your family will have expectations. Well, you're retired now. So you can pick up my kids from school a couple days a week,
Yeah.
or you could do this, or you could go out and get the lake house ready, or you could do, whatever those things are. You seem like you might be available labor to the other part of the family. How do you help people manage those boundaries? Well, now that you're retired, you can move back to where we are and help us with the kids. And you might be thinking, do I want to do that? How do you
Yes.
help them with that? I love
Yeah.
those kids. Maybe not move back there. I don't know.
Well, it really, I mean, the scenario that you're painting is a very prevalent one. And it kind of can cut both ways, where also people who are retiring assume that their family, their younger family, their kids and grandkids will want them in the picture. And I know I'm saying that really directly, but that it does cut both ways. And what it gets back to, just like we spoke about earlier, is communication and really being clear with your own vision. So is your vision, like I have friends who take care of grandkids every day of the week, and I think, oh my goodness, but that for them is a gift to them. That for them is that purposeful feeling. It is gratifying to them, and they do it by choice. And so we are the CEO of you. We're the leader of our lives. So we need to have that vision, and then we need to communicate it. And by communicating it, yes, we're going to have to establish some boundaries. I feel like I have a very well-worn article I send out to people about different ways to say no. And that oftentimes when we say
I wish
yes
I
to
could,
something,
but
when we say yes to something, we're saying no to ourselves.
Mhm.
And if we don't feed ourselves and have that nourishment for ourselves and that self-care, then it's hard for us to come out into the world as our best selves and be able to give of ourselves in ways that are really, bringing all the beauty and capabilities and richness that we have. So I think it can be a quick fix that we're taking care, being in the carpool lane 3 days a week. And again, I don't know her thoughts behind it. But if she was kind of sharing with you, yeah, it is a part-time job, then maybe there's something there that needs further discussion. So that's my
Well, I think so many people today, I've been hearing in the news all over LinkedIn in the last week, 3,000 people laid off at Meta, and Facebook, and 2,000 more people here, 50,000 IRS agents or something laid off. I have a friend who knows someone who left a government job here in Texas to take a shiny new job in Washington, D.C. 3 months ago, and they got laid off because they had less than 2 years on the job. So it's just like they were still in a probationary period, so they got swept right back out.
Yeah.
So they hadn't closed on the house. So, but with all this transition, you talk about being a transition coach,
Yeah.
Helping you manage your transition in retirement, and then doing that with the people around you. Like, who are you now? Are you available to me for carpool once in a while?
Yes.
Are you going to stay where you are or come back home or something?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I think so often, again, the focus is so heavily on the financial piece of it. And finances are critically important. They're foundational, but we bring all of ourselves into retirement. And so I've touched upon that sense of identity, that feeling of purposefulness, that navigating from career now to post-career, our social resume, that vitality around connection. And so all of those things and more, our perspective, pro-aging, positive mindset, all of those are areas that need attention. Just like when we were in work, oftentimes we let some things go by the wayside that are important to us. Maybe it's around community efforts and volunteerism, spirituality, family, travel, where we live, all kinds of different factors. And so we have a beautiful opportunity to rebalance. But if we're not mindful, and we just move from career into retirement and we carry all of those patterns and habits and on autopilot with us, then we're not going to be able to live into the full potential. And it's a unique and exciting time. It does feel like there's this time abundance, but let's really make the most of each day. Really see what all we can do. And that's why I want to share, Myrna and Brian, why this is so vitally important to me is that as we age, we still have so much we can contribute. There's so much that we can grow and learn and expand and give of ourselves. And so let's keep it on that upward slope and not buy into what maybe society or others tell us that again, it's going to be this endless weekends, leisure travel, or it's going to be this downward slope, but instead really enter with realistic optimism. I've shared a number of the statistics around it. And then really being able to see, okay, that the optimism is there. What is going to suit me and suit those that I love and move forward in that way?
I think it's one of those ideas. For instance, when you go away to college, if you do that, well, you've never done that before. So that transition, you have to learn what does it even mean to be in college? And the
Yes.
professors don't care if I show up to class in my pajamas. Like I'm living a life with no rules.
Yeah.
Like what is this like? And then the role of being in a job or having to travel in a job, having children, if you decide to do that, it's the middle of the night and I'm getting up again. When does this stop? Like, I don't know how this works either. Every time we go into a new chapter, we have this transition experience.
Yes.
This is uncharted territory. Again, it's uncharted territory.
But transitions are very overlooked. The power of transitions. And when I became a coach, that's what I did it wasn't really a thesis, but a project on, because in my corporate life, was always just looking for that next thing and, climbing the ladder and in retrospect, then bringing a lot of baggage or past habits with me and jumping right into that new beginning. And there's a lot of work by William Bridges and Bruce Feiler around the power of transitions, and that we really start with the ending and we really look at, closing that one chapter and what's needed. And that's why we have rituals, sometimes like celebrations, send-offs and things. But how do we close that chapter? How do we not be that short timer when we are leaving career, but leave on a high note? And then how do we then move into this period, they call it the neutral zone or messy middle, where we are allowing those emotions, that confusion, that stuckness, that anticipation, all of those things that come up for people as we move into any new milestone and transition, but allowing that time to start to envision, to start to reflect, to deal with those emotions before we embark on the new beginning. But this is where so often people in retirement jump right into that new beginning. They have the to-do list, the bucket list. They get very caught up with all of it. And then, like you said, then enough golfing already. And then that honeymoon phase is over. And then so many feel very lost and feel very like, wow, there's nothing more for me here. Or I don't really know what that could even look like because I haven't really built some of those hobbies or interests or connections and things. So to the extent that people can before they retire, I highly recommend a runway to retirement and taking small little steps to build those connections, to foster some of those interests, to see some of your skills and capabilities and use them in a different way. And for those that are already in retirement, then stepping back and saying, how am I spending my time? And how can I shift from that doing to that being and that connection with what's really important and meaningful to me? So lots of exciting things, but we have to raise the awareness. I'm so appreciative that I have this chance to put a spotlight on it and for people to be able to see beyond the finances and investing in themselves, not just stocks in their portfolio.
Well, I think about how much effort it took to get to that point in life. All the living, all the learning, the moving, the kids, and then let's make the most. Don't just sit in a rocking chair on a porch. But you've earned an opportunity to really pause and reflect. Where could I get my juice now? I think the last thing I want you to address, and then we'll let you go on with your day, is how to have the mindset of, well, I'm going to try growing champion roses. And if after, a season or two, I don't like it, I'm going to stop doing roses. How do you try things that maybe in your mind you thought, oh, I might always like to put pies into the fair and make the most perfect pies, or whatever the ideas you had, to give permission to try it and find out that was a good idea 5 years ago. I'm kind of hating it now. I don't want to do this. So that there's other things to try instead of, well, I failed retirement, not doing champion roses, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think oftentimes again we're tied to this to-do list and bucket list. That's kind of what's out there. That people just assume that's what you do in retirement. And instead, I encourage people to have a curiosity list. And so it's just things that maybe you'd want to put a toe in. Maybe you're going to research a little bit more. Maybe it kind of is an itch that you wanted to scratch. So with those roses on your curiosity list, what's the smallest step you could take to checking it out? So instead of, raising your backyard and seeding it, or however you do it with roses, because I'm not a gardener. Instead of that, maybe it's, taking a class or watching a webinar or talking to your neighbor about what they do, or planting one plant, but putting a toe in, because oftentimes we go all in and then it's hard to get all out, and then we start to feel resentful or resigned or well, then I just have to do it. And we don't. Again, be that leader of you, make those decisions. But the smallest step, and we know that, right? When we're looking at an outcome, what's the smallest step we can take to move in that direction?
Brian, did you have any other thoughts to share?
Well, I love hearing what you're talking about, Wendy. I like your idea of the runway to retirement. I think that's really important. I mean, I think we've all heard stories of people who retired and very quickly dropped dead. I mean, I'm not trying to be gauche here, but I
Mhm.
think especially for the people who really did almost nothing but work, like people that were working overtime consistently, things like that. Then when they just suddenly retire, it's like they just have no clue what to do with themselves. Like they've sort of lost their hobbies, their curiosity, they've lost their passions, and then they're just like sitting there. They don't really have friends or family coming by, or maybe they're divorced or they don't have a wife or husband. So I do think that's probably going to be a painful retirement if someone ends up
Yes.
going that way. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, I think that kind of easing into retirement and is really good. And I think just having a balanced life in general really helps. And that applies to retirement. So like you said, not just being 24 hours a day on vacation or something like that, maybe having a few things you still work on,
Mhm.
Yes.
some leisure time, staying curious, maybe learning something new to keep your mind active so you're not getting into just the 48 hours of TV a week or, whatever,
Um,
old episodes of MASH or something. But yeah, I think what you're talking about can really help people a lot with this. And I do think you're right. A lot of people have not thought about these issues. People
yes.
tend to focus on the financial piece, but what about meaning? What about how you actually spend your time? What about how are you going to socialize? All these
Yes.
other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're muscles that may be atrophied a little bit, but it doesn't mean that we can't get
Mhm.
back in the gym and move that social muscle and move that mental fitness, um, and really start to reconnect with what's important to us and others. Because otherwise, like you're saying, that what came up for me, Brian, when you were sharing is like a light switch. The light is on and then you leave work and then the light is off. And so that's why I really just love the work that I do because in a very quick time, I've shared a lot and hopefully it hasn't been too confusing taking you
No,
here.
not at all.
But I think that in a very short time, that fog can lift, that light switch doesn't have to be dimmed any longer because we can see, okay, here's the pathway. Myrna, you brought up before that, we have templates when we're going from school or going into a career or becoming a parent. But this template into retirement from a non-financial standpoint is very overlooked or very misunderstood. And I think people think, hey, if I have my financial house in order, all the rest will be so easy. I've done my heavy lifting. And yes, you have done heavy lifting. But that's not your work isn't done. And your life and your contribution are worth it. So the investment again in you is just so critically important. So let's not overlook that because it can be a time of growth and expansion and giving to yourself and to others. There's just so much. But even if you're already in retirement and you're starting to, feeling like, well, it's too late, it's never too late. Just like as we go through all courses in our lives, it's never too late to stop and assess and say, hey, how do I fit into this picture? What do I want? What am I capable of? What's getting in my way? And move forward.
I
So,
think that happens a lot with transitions. You like wait for the world to stop spinning. Okay, I'm in my new job or I'm in my college dorm room or the wedding is over. We're back from the honeymoon. Now we're sharing a house. I guess I'm married. What does married life look like? Or the baby has just come home from the hospital. Okay, so I think it makes sense to talk with someone who could say, here's a lot of things you probably haven't considered. Here's some worksheets and some things to think about to build a roadmap for yourself in this new phase of whatever you're doing. You could listen to smart adult children that you might have, like this one over here. It says, have you thought about your retirement? Maybe we should be doing some thinking about that. So there might be, I say kids, adults who say, Mom and Dad, I think you should be talking to Wendy. You know,
yes,
you're kind
I
of
get
bored.
all
The
that.
thing you were doing, you sort of ran to the end of the string and now you watch TV a lot. So maybe you could have a conversation with Wendy. So whether it's someone who wants to refer someone in retirement already or someone planning or anticipating retirement, how do they get a hold of you? What does it look like? Do they have a discovery call? Share with us a little bit about that.
Yes, yeah. Well, the name of my company is Conflux Retirement Coaching. So that's CONFLUX. And you can check out my website, complexretirementcoaching.com. There's a way to sign up to have a complimentary discovery call with me. And really what we do on that is, whatever challenges maybe are coming up for you, anything that you're wanting help navigating, an obstacle or opportunity that you see. And so it is a coaching call. And then as we go through it, you'll see if I can be a further support or if I've really enabled you to then move forward in a way that's empowering. I also have no regrets retirement exercise that I'm very happy to share with people because it starts that envisioning what are these days and months and years ahead going to look like. And so people can get that. I don't know if you'll put that in notes or I can
Sure,
mention.
yeah, share it with me. We'll put it in
Yeah.
the notes.
Yes, yeah. So you can go to www.boldnewsteps.com and request that. And that allows you, because as we talk today, Brian, Myrna, and I have all talked about this crystallizing and getting more clear on things. And by writing it down, you start to really see, okay, it becomes a little more tangible. It becomes a little more clear. And Myrna brought up earlier about with couples, and I said visualizing and individually this exercise helps us get started. I don't want to say that these things aren't work, but we know that anything in life does take our time and attention if it's important to us. And hopefully everyone knows that these 20, 30, hopefully more years ahead are important. Then you're going to give yourself some of that time and attention and invest in you. So those are the ways to reach me. I'm on LinkedIn, Wendy Leggett. You can find me on Facebook as well. So love to have people reach out and so excited to be part of this.
Welcome aboard. It's very exciting that you're going to help people with this important transition. Adult kids will be happy that their parents are settled in and happy about what's going on. People that are planning to exit their careers can say, and I kind of know what I'm up to, because isn't that what are you going to do when you retire? What are you going to do in 4 months? You're like, I figured it out with Wendy. I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to mention really quickly that I've had clients that say, I don't know what I'm going to do. And when we talk, it's a matter that they really want to just have a little bit of a break. There's that idea of a gap year between high school and college that some people exercise. Well, when we're moving into retirement, we can give a ponder, get a pause, have a gap for whatever period of time. But during that time, then let's start to envision. Let's not just be watching TV or traveling the whole time, although travel can be very expansive as well. But let's really key in on what's important to us and what we need to leave behind, have that ending, what's coming up for us before we embark on that new beginning.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much and welcome aboard to Alive Design.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.